The Parade of the Sports, 1776, lacrosse. (1836) Co O'Brien horse race. July 4th, 1861, the Turners perform.
Wenn wir sonntags in die Kirche gehen, es war immer so, bleiben wir noch erst im Wirtshaus stehen, es war immer so, Du lieber Gott im Himmelreich, vor dir sind alle Menschen gleich, denn wir sind ja deine Kinderlein. Es war immer so, immer durstige kleine Sünderlein. Es war immer so,
(1892) in the good old summertime. 1915. Dumbbells and Indians. Drilling. The 1920s. Football.
Notre Dame! Notre Dame!
The 1930s. Basketball. Tournaments.
The 1950s, Blue Sox.
1976. Trampoline and finale.
The glamour of South Bend is in its industries. From the rumbling cauldron come products known throughout the world. Companies large and small, companies still with us, companies gone for want of business, companies fled to warmer climes for want of an aeroplane. South Bend, brake merchant of the world, truck builder, toy, lathe, screw maker, mighty workshop on the St. Joe, spinning wheels in fertile valleys, bustling factories along green fields, products stream out along concrete ribbons, city on the move. South Bend, scion of steam, star of steel, sensation of society, solid citizen of singular scope, city of sweat. So many to choose from, so many to show, so many to tell about, so many to praise. In praising the few, we praise them all, representatives of South Bend's industry.
We sing the praise of South Bend's industries. We sing of wealth and fame, foundries to paints, plows, cars, and toys. We've shown the way, we've won the day, so come what may, okay, we sing the praise of South Bend's industries. We sing of wealth and fame, from construction to beer, bearings to drills. Oh, South Bend, you are just like a pretty girl.
The rich lands nourished by the St. Joe and the Kankakee rivers were destined to support important farming enterprises. Also destined to support the tillers of the land was the Oliver Corporation. It was a surprised 22-year-old Scottish immigrant named James Oliver who found himself owning part of an iron foundry in 1855. Oliver had bought a quarter interest for a grand sum of $88.96. One of the items the foundry made was a cast iron plow. Oliver, being at heart a farmer, was determined to produce a plow that would be much lighter. The farmer, he thought, deserved a plow that was easier to handle, that would score well so as to turn the soil cleanly and easily, and above all, the tool should be inexpensive. For 12 years, he and his associates experimented, planned, and dreamed. Finally, in 1867, the chilled plow was born. It was bright as a diamond and nearly as hard and fairly sang as it sliced its way through the black earth. The Oliver Corporation became famous as it supplied the Midwest and then Europe with thousands upon thousands of plows. The Germans are famous for beer, and South Bend has had its share of both Germans and beer. A Bavarian named Christopher Measle came to South Bend in 1849 and shortly thereafter began practicing his trade as brewmaster on the banks of the St. Joe, near where the new Century Center is now rising on the river. caves were dug back in under the banks of the river to age and store that beer, until that climactic joke known as Prohibition engulfed the U.S. in 1919, the Measle Brewery thrived. With the repeal of the Prohibition Amendment in 1933, other hands took over the management of the brewery, and finally in 1936, Drury became the sole owner of the company, and Drury's was a landmark of South Bend until just a few years ago. The Solid Construction Company is headed by a family who yesterday included an ancient York Minster Cathedral in England and the newer Presbyterian churches in South Bend and Elkhart. These churches, separated by some 150 years and thousands of miles, are random examples of the heritage of 5 generations of solids in the construction trades. Be it a massive dam flung across the Roanoke River in Virginia or a police calling booth in Mishawaka, the Solids have left a trail of significant accomplishments behind them. The Notre Dame Stadium, the Morris Auditorium, a warehouse for Montgomery Ward in Chicago, a naval ordnance plant in Arkansas, a shopping center in Oakland, and much, much more. The story of Bendix actually started in a Chicago hotel room in 1914 for the manufacture of the Bendix invention described as a transmission device for the starting of explosive motors, that is, the self-starter of the automobile. Bendix moved to South Bend in 1919, and by 1921, Bendix turned its attention to the growing field of aviation. In 1931, Bendix established the famed Bendix Transcontinental Air Race. It was a time of daring and glamour in aviation, and for a generation, the Bendix Air Race symbolized these qualities. Everyone loves toys. What 2 men quietly began in one small room of the mill race on the St. Joseph River 102 years ago has grown into one of the leading toy and game manufacturers of the world, the South Bend Toy Manufacturing Company. In 1874, John Teal and Frederick Badette began to handcraft wooden croquet balls, mallets, and stakes in a workshop on the west bank of the river. They had observed the growth and popularity of croquet, a growth enhanced by the fact that croquet was one of the few outdoor games in which a 19th century lady could properly take part. The river and the surrounding hardwood forests provided the material and the power, Teal and Badette the talent. Miniature Studebaker wagons, doll carriages, and shoe-fly rockers became staples of our society. Tipperary, Ireland is where Patrick O'Brien first cried his first cry in 1837. Arriving on these shores of promise, O'Brien established his first paint factory in 1875, when South Bend streets were still mud in the rain and rutted in the sun. Although the inventor of the electric lighting was a struggling visionary, and automobiles, radios, airplanes, and motion pictures were still immersed in the limbo of research, Patrick O'Brien became a businessman with the blessings and the support of his old employers, the Studebaker brothers. From varnish to linseed oil to the famous liquid velvet by 1906. Through good times and troubles, through successes and lesser successes, through wars and peaces, the O'Brien Corporation has been a leader in paints. Like so many of South Bend's industries, the Bantam Ball Bearing Company was born elsewhere and moved here because of the belief that this area would one day become the industrial center of the United States. In Bantam, Connecticut, in 1905, W.S. Rogers, the company's organizer, surmised that the concentration of automobile makers and the development of large steel mills in the Midwest would provide a base from which his Bantam Ball Bearing Company could work most effectively. So, in 1928, the first plant was built in South Bend. 1974 marked the 100th anniversary of the Sibley Machine and Foundry Corporation. It almost didn't happen. Albert Sibley of Massachusetts and his machinist business partner took a trip to Chicago to search out new business. Discouraged by what they didn't find there, they headed back east. On the way, they heard of Elkhart, Indiana, and stopped. They missed the train back to Massachusetts the next morning, and while waiting for the next one, discovered the potentials of the area and immediately decided to establish their business in South Bend. By the turn of the century, Sibley's would be advertising endorsements from the Oliver Chill Plow Works, the Studebaker Brothers, Dodge Manufacturing, the Indiana Buggy Company, Dr. Miles Medical Company, the Singer Sewing Machine, and the South Bend Toy Works, a roll call of the community's elite. For associates, the beginning came at a meeting on the evening of May 28, 1918. One man dominated the meeting that evening. His name was Ernest Morris. He was convinced that the majority of Americans believed in paying their debts. The people may have lacked collateral, but they were honest. Ernest Morris carried this faith of the working man into that meeting in 1918, and out of that meeting of 12 associates came the organization we know today. This has been part of the story of the South Bend's industry. It is the beating engine that feeds the things that make life worthwhile: theater, art, literature, and education. As a beautiful thing she is, South Bend's industry will grace our shores and lead us forward to a happier tomorrow if we but have faith, and are prepared to dedicate ourselves to hard work and hold our heads up with pride for the accomplishments of the past and the promise of the future.